Alright guys, so this is an episode that we're going to do where I describe and show you how to build a double pumper for your Evo. So before I was using brass fittings and doing it the cheap way, but this one I actually ordered up some fittings from STM and a bulkhead wire fitting from STM to make it look a little bit better. The bulkhead fittings seal a little bit better. I did do a thread on Evolution M about how to build your double pumper and the cheapest way to do it, how to do the dual lines, using the evap tube as your secondary fuel line. So I'm going to do the full breakdown on how to actually cut this thing apart and build it. And then the revised version that I'm going to do is the 6AN return. So show you what I'm talking about. Here's all the fittings. So got your fittings, right? So this is your saddle siphon right here. Let me pull back a little bit for you, but this is the line that is your return line. This is your line from your saddle on your Evo. So this actually pulls the fuel from the saddle on the passenger side of your tank, right? And this is your actual siphon right here. So what I'm going to do, and I'll try to get a good view of this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate all of this right here, and I'm going to replace it with this, tie into this piece, and we'll be able to use a 6AN return and still keep the saddle siphon, so you don't have to split it up between the two tanks. Just basically try to make it to where you can pretty much keep all the stock stuff as far as your insert goes. But you are gonna, on this car we're running a 10AN. We're coming off the fuel pump with two of these. We're wiring into a 6-6-10, or actually it's going to be an 8-8-10Y. We're going to reduce down to 2 6s, and then we're going to run a 10AN all the way up through a fuel filter, because on these, I don't know if you know, but this is the fuel filter right here. This whole piece is your fuel filter, and it's what they call a permanent filter. So anytime your fuel filter clogs up on an Evo, you end up spending like $450 to replace this. So yeah, this is pretty much just going to be this episode. I'm going to do the breakdown, I'm going to cut it apart, I'm going to show you how I build them. It is different from the way Busher builds them, so this is not a Busher build, but I definitely want to show you, the whole logist of being able to do it yourself. This is a real popular thing to do. I know that STM came out with a triple pumper, and I ended up building one of those for my car. I talked to Emery down at STM. He kind of gave me, I bought all the pieces from him and stuff, put it all together. I used the As-New 330s. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that pump name right. Anyway, and I'm running like 990 liters per hour. And on this pump, we're going to do 2 525s. I know in the beginning of our other video we're saying we're going to do 2 450s, but for the price upgrade, buying the pumps through Motivicity, I mean it wasn't that much more to do twin 525s, and they aren't much bigger, and actually they're not any bigger than the actual 450s. So we'll have 1,050 liters per hour with this setup that I'm going to show you, versus doing like a triple pumper or the 450s or twin 255s. So yeah, we'll get started. I got the fuel pump out of it and got the actual saddle siphon taken off, got the plug off for the actual power to the fuel pump and stuff. So it's fairly easy. Basically you just need a small flathead screwdriver, and I'll show you. So here it is. Saddle siphon goes on there like this, couple pitch clamps, you're good to go. The fuel pump, here's the fuel pump, it fits in there. The end of this goes in there, slides right in, you're good to go. And then this part just snaps onto the bottom here and sets in there like this, and all you got to do is just use a screwdriver on there to kind of bring it off of these little catches or these little snaps, and you're good to go there. You're not going to use this at all. This goes away. Don't need it. This goes away. Don't need it. So this this little wire right here is actually a ground for I believe it's just a ground for like the tank or something like that. I always incorporate it into my double pumpers. I usually use the ground, and I put the ground to the actual hose clamp that I will show you how I clamp it to the actual housing, how I build that. But you know, it's not a bad idea to kind of, you know, ground it out so, you know, there's not any issues. Not that I've had any issues yet, but you know, better safe than sorry. So I'm gonna do kind of I'm gonna show you, you know, as I'm cutting it, pulling it apart and stuff. I'll stop to explain, you know, why I do a few things here and there, but I'm mainly just going to be, you know, cutting and you know, designing this how I normally design it. You gotta cut a lot out of this thing. I mean, there is so much you got to cut out of it. You're going to have a pile left over. So you could probably do this at home with a Dremel and a hacksaw, but you know, the air tools that I'm going to be using, I mean, I'll you know, obviously you'll see me using them, but not everybody will have those. But you should be able to do this no problem at home with fairly simple tools. And then the other thing I'll show you real quick, the saddle siphon or the return line, I'm snap that off inside. I'll show you. So these have little clamps, right? As you can see, I kind of broke these ones off, so this pops right out. So you can see these little pieces right here that are the same as these ones right here. You just kind of snap those things off, and then you just kind of, you know, grind this thing flat right here, this little raised area that you see here, and then you're going to end up, this is what you end up with up top, and you know, this is what you're going to end up, you know, inserting into that area. You know, that'll go through, grind this nice and flat, make sure that this is nice and, you know, to where this seals to the top of it, so you don't have any kind of problems with, you know, gas slosh, or when you fill up the tank you end up with it bleeding out and whatnot. And then, like I said, STM, I bought all these pieces. This is the part for the wires. So really nice part. I did this on my pump. Works really well. You clamp this thing down, you know, as you spin this and you tighten it. As you can tell, you got these little pieces that clamp down on the rubber piece. So when you put these things together, you tighten it down, it clamps down on the wires. You got your gas-proof seal. So that's it. Let's get started.
Now, as Nate mentioned earlier, the bulk section of the fuel pump housing is the actual factory fuel filter. After all the cutting, he has finally gotten that section detached from the rest of the fuel pump housing itself. Now with the fuel pump housing surfaces flat, you're able to insert the bulkhead fitting and screw it down to complete the seal.
Alright guys, I've got all the excess plastic cut away, and this is what I've got. So, as you can see, cut all that out, basically use the actual die grinder, or that bit, to smooth all that out. You want to keep this, because this is actually your fuel level sending unit, you know, slides in there. I keep this riser right here for an area to strap your fuel pumps. So that way, you know, when you actually get your fuel pumps in, you'll see something to strap to. This comes from your saddle. So I'm keeping this in there so you can actually, you know, when I put this in, your saddle siphon will sit in there just like this. So basically what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up drilling out some holes. I got my fuel pump sitting here. We're going to make it to where I'm going to kind of size it all up and then kind of get my general location for my secondary pump hole, drill the hole out, get my fittings in, and you know, it all goes together after that. I mean, right now we've got, I don't know, 80% of the whole thing done. Now it's just drilling some holes, putting the fittings in, and then, you know, just setting the thing together and we're done. And I also wanted to show you, this is the actual permanent filter. It's not the greatest design, but this is Mitsubishi's design. So this is your permanent filter, a lot of plastic in there, but the fuel actually goes through these little, can't really see them that well, but there's actually corrugated cardboard. Believe it or not, this is all cardboard, and it runs through here down to this little space and then pops out right there and then gets fed back through this little hole up to your actual, you know, your fuel line. So it's not the best design, but hey, it works. Now to drill some holes, get some fittings in, and get this thing done. Okay, right off the bat, first thing I want to do, so this piece right here, this actually goes to your fuel pump, right? This is the piece that actually goes in right there, as you can see. So this goes to your fuel pump. The one thing that I like to do, leave myself a little bit of space, and since these are handy to keep around, go ahead and cut that there, cut that there, and then cut this piece because I'm going to tie that back in. Keep this piece because they're really handy to have, because that actually fits into the fuel pump. As you can see, this fits in here like that, so if you ever, you know, have a need for it, leave yourself enough to solder to or whatnot, you know, put that in your electrical drawer. Alright, so first off, look at that, that thing fits in there perfectly. So it looks like the nut has a flat side that'll fit right there. As you can see, I'm just going to thread this piece in. Boom, first fitting pretty much done. Alright, I'm going to use one of my spare -6 fittings that I have here. Thread that bad boy on there like so. And I'm going to tighten this thing up as far as I can go, hopefully. And it's good and tight. Feels like she'll seal pretty well. Did my best to get this surface flat. As you can kind of see, flat as you can get this, so it actually seals really well. Same thing here. This is going to be my return. So the next trick is that you have to shave off just this one barb. You got to get rid of this because you only have so much distance between, you know, where your insert goes in and the bottom of your tank, right? So you shave off this one barb so you can get the maximum distance between the bottom of the tank and the actual insert, because this is your actual gasket surface on the tank right here. So you don't want to cut into this ring at all if you can help it. You know, this ring stays intact, and then your gasket goes right here. But you have about, I think, 6 1/8 inches between this with the gasket and the bottom of the tank. So at that point, you literally, you know, you've got just so much room, you know, to where this is about as much as you can play with right here. And as you can tell, I'm gonna end up putting like a sleeve around this, so these two pumps, when they go together, you know, you can see the distance. They're going to be, you know, try to get them together and put a sleeve in there on both of them so they don't do this stuff, you know. So I'll show you that. That ends up going on there like that. As you can tell, it goes on there like that. I'm not going to push it all the way down, but kind of want to get an idea of what I got going on here. Alright, as you can tell, I kind of offset that hole a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fucking drill into this thing, and I'm going to push down as I drill. So good. Perfect. Alright, there's our first one. Alright, one of these pumps is going to this electrical fitting right here. So you can cut this thing off. Give yourself a little bit, you know, in case you ever want to use this plug again, because it comes with the other plug right here. But since this plug fits right in there, nice piece, you know, may as well give yourself a little bit of leeway. So you want something to kind of help, you know, that you clamp to, that'll help you space it out. Now you can see they fit together really well and keeps them nice and even and straight. Alright, firm believer in measure twice, cut once. It's going to be nice and tight. It's going to be right there, so seem to be doing okay. Spin that a little bit. Alright, this will be pump 1. This will be pump 2. Since this was the actual primary pump outlet, we'll just go ahead and run this as our primary pump, which will come off of, well, kind of come off this power, but we're going to break into this power, and we're not going to run this leg from the actual wiring harness. We're going to break into it. We're going to use the power leg that powers up this pump to power on a relay. Then we're going to run the relay straight to the battery, and we're going to use straight relay power for this one. And then the ECU will switch this one on. So this will be your primary pump that runs pretty much, you know, when you start the car and all that. And then this one will come on with, you can use like a Hobbs switch, or I recommend having the ECU turn it on. So that way at 75% throttle and, you know, 5 pounds of boost, you know, whichever, this pump comes on. And then the other thing too, make sure that your pump goes, this thing goes all the way down and has to touch it when you put the hose on. So same with this one. When you buy the fuel pump, they give you the install kit, which comes with a sock, the plug-in, and hose clamps and hose. So it's a good thing to go ahead and buy that kit. Get them good and snug. Don't over tighten them. Just get them good and snug in there. They're not going to pop off. Alright, I like to solder these, but you can use the heat shrink style little butt connectors. These aren't them, they got the extended ends, but you can use those on here too. I do like to kind of isolate it from the fuel as to not, you know, cause any issues. So this piece, literally, you can just push this little tab down, slide back up from underneath this, and I just put this thing on the clamp. I just set this on the actual clamp that you're going to see me put it around, so at least there's some kind of ground, you know, inside of the fuel pumps themselves. You may or may not need it, I don't know, but you know, I kind of think it's nice to have. This is a nice little snap-on soldering iron. Love it. It uses butane, kind of spendy, but for hands-free cord-free, it works really, really, really well. Do yourself a favor. Don't forget to put your shrink wrap on before you do this. Kicking yourself high and low for not doing it that way. Trust me. Force it over it. There we go. Look at that. Boom! Break out the old long lighter. Pray it works. Lube that up a little bit. There we go. Make sure the edge isn't out too far. This thing's fun to get in the tank, trust me. It's not the easiest thing to do.
as you can see, that all fits really well. We're good to go there. What I'm going to want to do now is I need to drill the hole for the other one, so I'm going to have to take this thing back apart. Don't want to break that. There we go. Okay, so now, bulkhead fitting. Quite a ways down. Alright, so it's about a 7/8 right there. This thing's got an O-ring on it, so you definitely try to get it nice and tight so it's not leaking fuel. So I'm going to hold this on there and use my 7/8 socket. Get it nice and tight. About as tight as I dare to get it. There's your harness piece. So assuming how this thing has 4 holes, right? And I'm only using these 2. And these other 2 are actually for your fuel pump power. We're going to go ahead and use those. We're not going to do the double because they're just these connectors are so big. So we'll probably fish this up out of the way so it'll fit in there and kind of go like this. I'll probably just scab a couple wires and just stub them through to fill up the void. Shoot a little silicone in there or something like that, tighten it all down, and then that way it has something to pinch to seal to. So the install kit comes with another that, so I'll probably put those in, cut it off, just so I got something to fill up those 2 holes. Alright, I'm going to pull the sock off here because they're not all the way on yet. Now what you want to do is you kind of want to line up the edge of this with the edge of this the best you can. I mean, it can hang over just a little bit, but you just don't want it to hang over so far that you're really finagling it to get it in, And once you clamp it, you're using this to kind of clamp your fuel pumps down. Just slide these guys down a little bit, and then you just kind of clamp it to this guy to kind of hold it all together. I mean, it's just there to kind of keep it stable, That's all that piece is that I leave there to do. That way these things aren't just totally flopping around, which they don't really flop around in the tank, but I just like it. A little reassurance, So alright, so this plug is going to have to go on the inside here. So I'll shove it on in there. Okay, so I do like to have a plug in here for if you ever do want to replace this fuel pump, if you ever have any issues or anything like that. Run that over that way, and we'll just run this bad boy right here underneath. See how I got that underneath right there? And then we'll just stab this bad boy right down. Twist it, stab it right down right there. Boom! Done. There we go. There we go. Heck yeah. Alright. Fish this bad boy down in between this piece of rubber and the clamp here. kind of like that. As you can see, I just want to ground, you know. It was in there for a reason. I mean, it's not a bad thing to keep. Alright, so, as you can tell where I cut this, you probably could have went over just a hair more to pick up this pump, made this a little bit wider. I mean, that's the only other thing I could have done, because it's just kind of, you know, but, I mean, she is good and solid. I mean, she is good and solid. So, let's go ahead and set the socks on. These you don't got to worry about. They're big, they fold. I mean, you're good to go. Alright, socks are in, that's done. There you go. So when you feed this down into that piece, it's a trick. I'll show you what, you know, how to actually set the bad boy in there. So alright, that turned out perfect. Even though I could have made sure the clamp was turned the right way, but oh well. Boom, saddle siphon, double pumper, check it out. Alright, I'm going to fill these two holes with some more wire. This is going to be our return, 120 degree fitting there. I suggest 6 AN, 120 degree fittings for all of them. Right, and then when this thing sits in there, it's going to kind of sit like this, right? So front of the car, back seat, passenger door sits in there like this. You're gonna have a fun time fishing this in there. Like I said, I'll show you. We'll tighten this thing down, because as you tighten this down, it clamps this rubber piece down onto these wires. Like I said, I'm not going to do that until I stick another 2 pieces of wire in there just to kind of fill up those 2 holes. We'll twist that down, clamp them on there, we're good. But, I mean, yeah, we're going to be sitting in there like that. Probably do 120 degree fitting here, 120 degree fitting here, same here. The cover, I'm going to show you that we're going to have to beat the cover out so it's like a mound. So that way all this stuff fits. But boom, that is 1,050 liters per hour right there. Boom, done, good to go.
Well, and that wraps up this episode here at Snellfed Performance. We appreciate you stopping by and checking out the channel. Hopefully you give us a like and subscribe for future updates on Mark's Evo, as well as other projects we have down the line. Have a great day, and thanks for coming by.